Hello YouTubers! I will be going through this week's games, review last week's tips and leaderboard of our footy tip comp, and also go through my Brownlow Votes for season 2025. My Brownlow predictor results are: in top spot, he's made the move, and Dacos, Collingwood with 29 votes, and in second spot, B. Smith, Geelong with 26 votes. We got two players tied on third spot that are C. Sarong, Fremantle, and N. Anderson, Gold Coast. And to round out the top 5, we have Z. Merritt, Essendon with 20 votes. These are my top 5 of the 2025 Brownlow Medal predictor after round 18. Let's look at my round 18 votes. I had 2 incorrect. I selected the Doggies with the Crows, incorrect. And in an upset, I tipped the Bombers to beat the Tigers. Got those 2 games wrong. Therefore, for round 18, I had selected 7 out of 9 correct. It was okay, but I could have done better. Let's look at the leaderboard for the Talking Everything AFL footy tips. In top spot with 2 people on 104 votes are me, Talking Everything AFL, and Potter 1. In third spot with 103, we have Patrick L32. And to round out the top 4 with 100 votes, we have I Am Hacks. These are the top 4 of the footy tips for the Talking Everything AFL channel. Alright, before we continue, I would like to ask for a very small favour. If you enjoy this AFL content, please take a sec to subscribe to the channel and like the video. That would be awesome. Okay, let's return back to the show. The first game of the week, played on a Thursday night, is between the Essendon Bombers and GWS Giants at Marvel Stadium. Last week, the Bombers lost to Richmond by 9 points, and the Giants had a magnificent 26-point win against the Geelong Cats. The players injured for the Bombers are Bryan, Caldwell, Cox, Draper, Edwards, Hayes, Harrison Jones, Langford, Mackay, Parrish, Reid. Now you can add Nick Martin and Settersfield. So many players injured. For the Giants, they'll be missing Angrove, Daniels, Hannaford, Stone, Taylor, Ward, and Woodinus. Still got some players injured, but not as much compared to the Essendon Bombers. The players in the mix for the Bombers are Dave Wicks, Graham, and Vicentini. Whereas for the Giants, their players in the mix are Ware, Leake, and McMullen. Where the game will be won at, what can I say? It's the injury list. Essendon are missing more than a dozen players. They might be able just to fit a team of 23 players for this week. The Giants, good side, good players. They're in the mix for the top 4. One team is struggling with injuries. The Giants are in good form, being the Cats last week. I'm going to tip the Giants to beat Essendon easily by 40 points. The second game of the week, played on a Friday night, is between the Brisbane Lions and the Western Bulldogs, played at the Gabba. Last week, the Lions had a good 37-point win against the Blues, whereas the Doggies lost to the Crows by 11 points at home. The players injured for the Lions are McCarthy, Payne, and Ainsworth. For the Doggies, they'll be missing Harms, Jones, Treloar, and Waitman. The players in the mix for the Lions are Brecken, Merrill, and Gallup. For the Doggies, their players in the mix are DeRay, Khamis, McNeil, and Liam Jones. Where the game will be won at, it's the ruck midfield set of the 2 respective sides. For the Lions, in ruck, you got the Big O or Fort, with the midfields of Dunkley, Neil, McCluggage, Berry, and Bailey. For the Doggies, you got English in ruck, in the midfields of the Bont, Liberatore, Richards, Fraser, and Sanders. Look at the 2 sides, they've got gun mids in, i.e. Dunkley and Neil for the Lions and the Bont and Liber for the Western Bulldogs. But it's the other midfields where the Lions got McCluggage, Bailey, and Berry, just class. Richards is a gun player who may make all Australian shoot, but I got Sanders and Fraser on their respective wings, and I expect Bailey and Berry to get the advantage over the 2 Western Bulldogs wingers, and therefore they can provide so many inside 50s for the forwards of the Brisbane Lions, like your Morris, Charlie Cameron, to kick a massive bag, and therefore I'm going to tip the Lions to beat the Western Bulldogs by 26 points. The third game of the week is played Saturday lunchtime at Tasmania between Hawthorn Hawks and Port Adelaide Power. The players injured for the Hawks are Butler, Day, Ryan, Moreira and Riddle. For the Power, they'll be missing Charleston, Crockham, Marshall, Moss, Powell Pepper, Ragalia, Visitini and Welsh. Some players out for the Power for season-ending injuries from last week. The players in the mix for the Hawks are Shrimshaw, McDonald and Ramson. For the Power, their players in the mix are Atkins, Evans and Soldo. Where the game will be won at, it's the ruck midfield setup of the two respective sides. For the Hawks, you got Meakin ruck with the midfields of Newcombe, Ward, Nash, Morris and D'Ambrosi. For the Power, you got Sweet in ruck with the midfields of Bergman, Butters, Drew, Horn-Francis and Burgoyne. Just looking at that, in midfield for the Hawk, Newcombe, Ward against Bergman and Butters. Two good midfielders for the two respective sides, I should say. And then you got Bergman on the wing with Drew, Horn-Francis with D'Ambrosi, Nash and Morris. I just slightly give the edge to the Power. However, Hawthorn got good players in the full line. Your Gunston, Wizard Watson, whereas the Power missing regularly in defense and up forward. No Marshall. They're going to be struggling to kick some goals, the Power. And I'm going to say Hawthorn just by 10 points. The next game is between Sydney Swans and Melbourne Kangaroos, played Saturday afternoon at the SCG. The players missing for the Swans are Adams, Amadi, Edwards, McDonald and Papali. For the Kangas, they'll be missing Archer, Bergman, Tucker and Core. The players in the mix for the Swans are Florent, Corey Warner and Adams. For the Kangas, their players in the mix are Callum Jones, Larkey, Lordiu, Dersma and Fisher. Where the game will be won at, it's the ruck midfield setup of the two respective sides. For Sydney, you got Grundy in ruck in the midfields of Heaney, Warner, Gordon, Lloyd, Jordan. Some good players. For the Kangas, you got Xavier in ruck in the midfields of Sheasel, Powell, LDU, Simpkin and Stevens, ex-Sydney Swans player. If you compare, I expect Xavier just to dominate slightly over against Grundy, then the midfields of Heaney and Jordan against Powell and Sheasel. Heaney and Sheasel are good players, but Jordan is a great tagger and I reckon he'll be able to stop Sheasel. And then in centre, Chad Warner against LDU. LDU is good extractor and can burst out stoppages. Warner has good outside skills. Then you've got Stevens and Simpkin on the respective wings against Lloyd, who can play in the gaining role, and Gordon, one of the best kickers in the league. I give the advantage to Sydney in those two wing positions. Overall, I expect Sydney to get more inside 50s due to the midfield winning more clearances and stoppages, and therefore the Swans just to kick more goals than the Kangaroos because they're missing some players like Amadi and Papley. But I still predict Swans to beat Melbourne Kangaroos in a close game by 7 points. The next game, played on the Saturday night, is between Carlton and Melbourne at the MCG on a Saturday night. The players injured for the Blues are Cottrell, Kemp, McKay, Newman, Smith, Walsh, Young and Fantasia with a hamstring injury. For the D's, they'll be missing Hoare, Johnson, McAdam, Norwich Wakefield, Petty and Seston. The players in the mix for the Blues are Akers, Sars, Savani, Evans and Lemming. For the D's, their players in the mix are Campbell, Henderson and Howes. Where the game will be won at, it's the ruck midfield setup of the two respective sides. For the Blues, you've got Picknott in ruck with the midfields of Sarah, Hewitt, Cripps, Akers and Carroll. For the D's, you've got Gordon in ruck with the midfields of Oliver, Winey, Petrarca, Langland and Sparrow. Just comparing the two, I give the chocks to Gorn over Picknott in the midfields of Oliver, Winey against Sarah and Hewitt. I'll give that to the D's midfields. Winey, good inside midfield. Hewitt, good midfield, can get a lot of ball, but I just give the advantage to those two D's players over the two Carlton players. Then, in the other side of the midfield, you got Petrarca against Cripps. So that's even between the two, but Petrarca can go and kick goals. Then on the wings, the respective wings for the two sides, you got Sparrow and Langland for the D's against Carroll and Akers. I reckon that the wingers of the two respective sides will be pretty even. Say that's even. Therefore, I'll give the D's midfield the advantage and they can provide more inside 50s compared to the Carlton forwards. And therefore, I'm going to select the D's in a close one by 8 points. The other game played on a Saturday night is between West Coast Eagles and Richmond Tigers, played at the stadium in Western Australia. The players injured for the Eagles are Allen, Woodman, Yo and Graham to suspension, who will miss his game against his old side. For the Tigers, they'll be missing Olga, Brewer, Clark, Kalinia, Dow, Fawcett, Lalor, Lafu, Lynch to suspension, McAuliffe, Wow Smith, Ryan, Smiley, and Bolter. So many players out. This game, if it was playing Melbourne, I would definitely tip Richmond. But because Richmond has so many injuries, West Coast have been struggling recently, but I reckon they're playing at home. There's going to be an almost full crowd or full house where Spurs know that they've got a chance of winning this game. And I reckon West is going to win an upset by 5 points. It's going to be a very close game. This game was so hard to predict because both teams are rebuilding, and I just gave the advantage of West Coast because it's playing the home ground of the stadium. The next game is between Geelong Cats versus St Kilda at GMHBA Stadium, played on a Sunday lunchtime. The players injured for the Cats are Conway, Duncan, Guthrie, Kozowski, and Wiltshire. For the Saints, they'll be missing Howard, King, Philippou, and Webster. The players in the mix for the Cats are Buse, Stengel, Newett. For the Saints, their players in the mix are Burns, Keeler, and O'Connell. Where the game will be won at, it's the ruck midfield setup of the two respective sides. For the Cats, you got standing ruck with the midfield of Holmes, Atkins, Smith, Dempsey, and Bowles. For the Saints, you got Marshall ruck in the midfields of McRae, Steele, Garcia, Wood, and Hill. And you look at the two, I love the Geelong's midfield. The Saints have got good players. McRae and Steele are good inside mids. Got Cats, you got Holmes and Smith, good on the outside. Then get the ball inside, but they're very fast and can express their speed on the outside. And you got Dempsey. What a find. A player that's so good in transition from defense to forward on the wing. I like watching Dempsey. Good player. And looking at the Geelong's midfield, it's got class and got good players and speed. I give the Geelong midfield advantage in the stoppages and clearances, and they'll be able to provide more inside 50 compared to the Saints mids, where Geelong, you got Jeremy Cameron and Stengel and others like Neil and Myers to contribute on the scoreboard. And I'm going to tip Geelong to win by 18 points. The next game, played on Sunday afternoon, is between Collingwood and Fremantle Dockers at the MCG. Last week, Collingwood lost their first game in 9 weeks, where they lost to Gold Coast Suns by 6 points, whereas Fremantle had a good come from behind victory to beat Hawthorn by 13 points. The players injured for the Maggies are DeGoey, Frampton, Harrison, Jow, McRae, McCready, McInnes, Ryan, and West. For Freo, they're missing Young, Fife, Jones, Riddle, and Simpson. The players in the mix for the Maggies are Lipinski, Parker, and Allen. For Fremantle, their players in the mix are H, Erasmus, and Draper. Where the game will be won at, it's the ruck midfield setup of the two respective sides. For Collingwood, you got Cameron in ruck with the midfields of Cripps, Dacos, Long, Markov, Sidebottom. For Fremantle, you got Jackson ruck with the midfields of Sarong, Brayshaw, Wagner, O'Driscoll, and Johnson. Looking at the two, Johnson against Cameron ruck, I just give advantage to Cameron of Collingwood, but it's the midfield. Sarong, Brayshaw, good players. Cripps, good player as well for Collingwood, can play in the gaining role and finds playing the ball, but and Dacos, star player, what a gun. I just give advantage for those two Collingwood players against the two Fremantle gun midfielders. Then you got Long, Markov, and Sidebottom for Collingwood compared to Fremantle, Wagner, Johnson, and O'Driscoll. I slightly just give that advantage to the Fremantle winners, but overall, I like the ruck midfield setup of Collingwood, and I'll just give that advantage to Collingwood. Therefore, based on those numbers or players, I expect Collingwood to provide more inside 50s and their forwards to kick goals like your Myercheck and Elliott, where I reckon they can kick a bag of goals. And therefore, I want to tip Collingwood to win by 8 points. Gonna be a close game. The last game of the week, played on a Sunday evening or twilight, is between the Adelaide Crows and Gold Coast Suns at Adelaide Oval. I reckon this will be game of the week. Last week, the Crows had a good 11-point win against the Doggies, whereas Gold Coast had a magnificent 6-point win against Collingwood, where they restricted Collingwood to be goalless in the first half. The players injured for the Crows are Crouch, Toby Murray, Rochelle, Welsh, Cook, and Bust. For the Suns, they'll be missing Ballard, Caleb, and Will Graham respectively, Hilbert, and Noble. The players in the mix for the Crows are Nick Murray, Smith, and Pedler. For the Suns, their players in the mix are Moyle, Collins, Lombard, and Jepson. Where the game will be won at, it's the Crows forward line. In the forward line for the Crows, you got Keys, Philthorpe, Taylor, Fogarty, Walker and Rankin. Some class players there. For the Suns in defense, you got Noble, Power, Rioli, Adams, Andrew and Ulan. They need Collins to be back this week because the Crows got 3 tolls in your Philthorpe, your Fogarty and Walker. And one of these players always seem to kick a bag every game. And then you got the magnificent Rankin against his old side who can shut the ball, kick goals, got electric speed, and Ben Keys will play good in the game role, but always seems to find goals. And just looking at these numbers, I expect the Crows forwards to dominate and kick a massive bag. And I'm going to say the Crows in a close one by 5 points. My round 19 tips are the Giants to win at Essendon, and then Brisbane, Hawthorn and Sydney Swans to win their respective home games. The D's to beat the Blues, West Coast, Geelong, Collingwood and the Crows to all win their respective home games. Thank you for watching my video, and it will be appreciated if you can subscribe and comment to my videos. Hopefully you enjoyed my video, and see you next time. Cheers or bye.